Active Directory authentication. As we have discussed in the previous videos, Active Directory is a directory service which provides authentications and authorization services to Windows-based computers as well as networks. Active Directory uses several authentication mechanisms in order to authenticate users and project network resources. Popular example of such mechanisms within Active Directory includes NTLM and Kerberos authentication mechanisms. NTLM stands for Anti-LAN Manager and is an authentication protocol commonly found on Windows-based systems. It deploys a challenge response mechanisms to verify users and grant access to network resources. However, its password hash could potentially be intercepted and used against an individual without their knowledge or approval, resulting in compromised credentials for them. Here is an outline of the NTLM authentication process. Once the user provides their credentials during login, the client provides his username directly to the server in plain text. To create the challenge, the server generates and transmits an 8-byte random number called the challenge to client device. In the third step, a client encrypts the challenge using the hash of the user's password and then returns the encrypted result back to the server for processing in what's known as the response phase. The server sends the following three things to the domain controller: username, challenge sent to the client, response received from the client. To encrypt the challenge sent to the server, domain controller retrieves the user's password hash from the securities account manager database using their username. The password hash obtained from the database is then utilized for encryption process. Authentication is considered successful when the domain controller verifies that the encrypted challenge matches the response generated by the client. Once authenticated, the server and client establish a secure session by using a shared secret key. This key encrypts all the data sent between them during this session. Microsoft recognized that NTLM was vulnerable to man-in-the-middle attacks and it had weak encryption. Therefore, by Microsoft 2000 saw the introduction of NTLM v2, an enhanced version of NTLM v1 with many security improvements. We will now look at some of the key differences between the two versions. One of the key differences between NTLM and NTLM v2 lies in their respective hashes used to encrypt passwords. MD4 is weak and vulnerable to brute force attacks, while HMAC MD5 offer more resistance. Another difference between the two protocols lies in their challenge response message length. NTLM uses fixed 24-byte challenge and response messages, while NTLM v2 allows variable length challenge response messages, which increases security by making it harder for an attacker to predict response lengths. NTLM v2 also includes support for session security. The client and servers can establish a secure session key that encrypts all the subsequent communication between them and provide another layer of protection against attacks. Let's move on to our next topic, Kerberos. Kerberos is often preferred over NTLM v2 for its greater security, scalability, and flexibility in larger or more complex environments. Kerberos is a network authentication protocol that uses tickets for secure authentication and authorization services, making it the default authentication mechanism used in Active Directory. Kerberos authentication relies on symmetric key cryptography for enhanced security compared with its rival NTLM authentication methods. Components of Kerberos. Kerberos has three main components: authentication server, short for AS, ticket granting server, short for TGS, and Kerberos client. We will now discuss the components in brief. Authentication server. The AS is responsible for authenticating users and providing them with the TGT, ticket granting ticket, upon successful authentication. The TGT is used to obtain service tickets from the TGS, from ticket granting service, for accessing network resources. The ticket granting server TGS. The TGS is responsible for issuing service tickets to users who have presented a valid TGT. The service ticket contains a session key to encrypt communication between the users and the accessed network resource. The authentication and ticket granting services are collectively known as the Key Distribution Center, short for KDC, usually the domain controller. Kerberos client. The Kerberos client is the operating system or application component that initiates the authentication process. The client sends the user's credentials to the AS and obtains a TGT, which is used to obtain a service ticket from the TGS for accessing network resources. Moving on to Kerberos authentication. Kerberos authentication includes several steps. At first, user will provide their login credential to login. AS RAC. Kerberos client submits an AS request for a ticket granting ticket, providing user ID, domain name, and encrypted password details in the request. ASRAP. An authentication server authenticates and verifies user credentials before returning it to Kerberos clients as a TGT with information such as identity and secret key encrypted with password once generated. TGTs may cached for future use in accessing network resource. TGS RAC. The Kerberos client requests a service ticket from tickets granting server. The request includes the network resource that the user wants to access and the TGT. TGS RAP. The ticket granting server verifies the TGT by decrypting it with the user's secret key. If TGT is valid, the TGT generates a service ticket and sends back to the Kerberos client. The Kerberos client presents the service ticket to the network resource the user wants to access. The service ticket contains the user's identity and the session key encrypted with the network resource secret key. The network resource decrypts the service ticket using its secret key and validates the user's identity. If the service ticket is valid, the network resource grants user access to the requested resource. Once the network resource grants access to the user, a session is established between the user and the network resource. The session key encrypts the communication between the user and the network resource. The TGT and ST have a limited validity period. When the validity expires, the Kerberos client requests the TGT and service ticket renewal from the authentication server and ticket granting server respectively. Privileged account certificate. Privileged attribute certificate. The privileged attribute certificate or PAC is a component of the Kerberos authentication process in Active Directory. The PAC is a security certificate that contains information about the security groups and privileges associated with the user account. PAC provides a way to authorize users for specific resources within the Active Directory environment. By including information about the user's groups, memberships, and associated privileges, the PAC allows the system to determine which resource the user can access and which actions they can perform. PAC also prevents unauthorized access to sensitive resources. The system can ensure that only authorized users can access sensitive data or applications by verifying the user's groups and memberships and privileges. Kerberos authentication produces the PAC when users log into Active Directory and includes in it their Kerberos ticket for authentication of user resources on the network. When the user attempts to access a service, the service checks their TGT for permissions before they copy their PAC into their service ticket, so they may use ASRAC to access the resource. Once approved, their service ticket may be used to access the service. PKInit, Public Key Cryptography for Initial Authentication, commonly referred to as PKInit, represents a major advancement in Kerberos authentication. Unlike the conventional approach that relies on symmetric key cryptography through shared keys, PKInit introduces the use of asymmetric keys, bringing the robust security feature of public key cryptography into the initial authentication phase. At the core of PKInit is its public key infrastructure framework, compromises of public-private key pairs management, digital certificate distribution, and establishment of reliable certificate authorities. X.509 certificate plays an essential part in the infrastructure as they represent client public key during authentication procedures. Additionally, the KDC Key Distribution Center may also employ an X.509 certificate, further enriching the security posture. The authentication sequence in PKInit unfolds in a manner distinct from traditional Kerberos model. When a client initiates a ticket request, it presents its X.509 certificate instead of customary pre-shared secret key. The KDC in return undertakes the verification of the client certificate using the public key of the trusted CA. Successful verification paves the way for a secure key exchange between the KDC and the client, ultimately establish a session key for subsequent communications. PKInit offers several advantages to contribute to its adoption in security-sensitive scenarios. The incorporation of public key cryptography results in heightened security, particularly during the critical initial authentication phase. The resistance to certain types of attacks involving the interception or theft of credential information is notably increased as private keys are not transmitted over network. Furthermore, PKInit seamlessly integrates with smart card technology, enabling users to authenticate without the need of password entry. In practical terms, PKInit finds applications in environments where elevated security measures are imperative. It is equally well suited for scenarios requiring strong authentication or where traditional password-based mechanisms or methods may be deemed ineffective. Deployments often include environments where smart cards are utilized as the private keys associated with user certificates are securely stored on their physical devices. The configuration of PKInit involves adjustments to both the KDC and client systems. Certificates must be issued to clients and KDCs, and the necessary configuration needs to be in place to facilitate the acceptance and verification of these certificates during the authentication process. PKInit thus stands as a valuable enhancement to Kerberos, offering a more secure and sophisticated approach to